Welcome to Raw Living Radio, where world-renowned leading-edge speakers, doctors, scientists, authors, and lifestyle experts share highly valuable weekly coaching tips, recipes, and empowering information about adding more raw living plant foods to your diet to improve your health, decrease your ego footprint, and raise your consciousness. This is Laura Sharia Fox, Executive Director of Best of Raw and the Raw Living Expo, and I'm happy to introduce your hosts, Mixtress Hava, Clementine Libre, and Nathan Crane. I do indeed hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome back, everybody. It's Clementine Libre here, and I am joined with some amazing people today that we will move to in just a moment, Hava and Sacred Steve, and we're so excited to be bringing you this October chocolatey goodness. This is a time of year where people go all out about the candy and especially chocolate, and we are so excited to have this show for you this week, and we're so excited that you've shown up again, once again, to listen and to learn and to share with us. So thank you so much for supporting this and being there, and I can't wait for the show. I am just about to jump out of my seat. How are you doing today, Hava?
Same over here, babe. Yep, doing great. Had my green juice, and of course today I had to have a big chunk of chocolate. This is a subject probably can't get any closer to my heart than chocolate. It's I'm very excited too.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm having the chocolate with you, and I'm experiencing it through you today because I'm in the middle of a bit of a cleanse right now and kind of cleansing a lot of stuff out. But I'm feeling the chocolate vibe no matter what.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I would love to introduce our guest today. He also has these two subjects of chocolate and love near and dear to his heart. Sacred Steve Adler. He is one of the founding fathers, really, of the raw chocolate movement and created the Sacred Chocolate Company with David Wolf, a handful of years ago, probably about 7 years ago. Sacred Chocolate's made not only with the highest standards, but the quality ingredients, and really some of the greatest herbs, and we'll get into more about what Steve and David are using in the chocolates to really raise not only our vibration but our health, and we'll get into that more. But yeah, he's infusing love and gratitude and the intention of ascension for those who eat it into the chocolates through prayer and music and mantra over every batch. And so they're really creating a chocolate that's helping bring about a planetary shift in consciousness towards oneness and love. And we'll get into really how chocolate can be a tool on the spiritual path. Thank you so much for joining us today, Steve.
Thank you, Hava, and thank you, Clementine. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, it's been really a full circle to have you on the show today. For me, raw chocolate became a huge part of my life, partly because of you. I had my first sacred chocolate at a Raw Spirit here in Sedona. I think it's been about 7 or 8 years ago, and I had a milk chocolate, which I think is still one of your best sellers, and just changed my life around one of my favorite foods, chocolate. And so it's been you've been a huge part of my life all these years, and you didn't even know it.
That's great. That's actually part of the mission of Sacred Chocolate, really, is to awaken people to the benefits of raw cacao and how that can help them on a lot of different levels. I remember that very first Raw Spirit Festival in 2007. A woman came up who was a very well-known psychic, and she said, there's something about this chocolate that I'm picking up. And I said, well, what is it? And she said, well, I don't know. There's just a vibration. And I've eaten a lot of chocolate here at this Raw Spirit Festival, but I have to say there's something different. And I was flattered, to say the least. But, I said, well, I'm a minister of the Sacred Heart, and I actually pray over all the chocolate. That's the most important thing about this chocolate. And she said, well, I can feel it because I'm an empath. And then, she went on to demonstrate those abilities and skills. I was pretty much blown away, actually.
Wow, that is cool. That is so cool to know.
Yeah, well, definitely we're talking about a substance that's really been revered for its heart-opening properties. So what you're doing is, looking at your whole devotion, Steve, to the Sacred Heart and its expression and really being in the one love. You've just got this beautiful physical manifestation of the one love here in this chocolate. I know the Mayans revered it for its heart-opening properties. I've done a lot of ceremonies with the raw chocolate. I know that I've had some of the most sacred and profound experiences drinking raw chocolate if I've had to have a really intense discussion with somebody, move through any energy with somebody in a group. It is really such a powerful medium for getting into our hearts.
Yeah, no, it really is. I mean, obviously, if you look at the Mesoamericans, cacao was at the center of all their ceremonies, from weddings to shamanistic rituals. In this day and age, chocolate's always given as gifts associated with, sweethearts and just, gifts to friends, family, lovers. Chocolate's always been associated with love and also the physical heart and the circulatory system. And what I'm going to touch upon more is the spiritual heart and the etheric heart. And so, I feel really honored and blessed that through my relationship with David Wolf, I've known him for nearly 20 years, I came across this whole subject of raw cacao. I mean, he kept turning me on to it, and I thought, gosh, what if we could actually make an amazing raw chocolate bar that's finely tempered and gourmet. And so I went at it in my kitchen, and before I knew it, we had a chocolate factory, and David decided to partner, and we created Sacred Chocolate. And so I just feel honored and blessed that this has come about, and I've been at the forefront. I've been one of the leaders in this, and it's been a lot of fun. It's like I feel almost like I'm one of the ambassadors of the raw chocolate movement, and so I have a huge responsibility to everybody out there to, hold that space, be a champion for it, be committed to it, be unwavering as far as our ideals and our commitment to excellence. And so, we keep, obviously pushing the envelope here. We are always coming out with new cutting-edge chocolate bars. And but, for me, the most important aspect of the whole thing is the spirituality behind it. I've been into raw foods for, over 20 years actually now. And, that for me was a huge heart awakening. I think, obviously a lot of the sages and gurus throughout history have sort of professed fasting and prayer and things like this for heart awakenings. And I guess along those lines came for me raw foods. I mean, when I got into it, I wasn't expecting to have the experiences that I did, but I really had huge spiritual awakenings through that experience of getting into like this raw food lifestyle. I think mainly it was because I was eating just all plant-based foods at the time, and so that's so high in water, basically, that it was very cleansing to my whole body. So I was cleansing this temple that our spirit is inhabiting. And so as that was, being cleansed out, I was more in tune to the subtle energies of love and the creator of the universe. And those energies are very magnetic. Those water energies are very magnetic in nature, and that's actually supportive of that spiritual sacred heart. So one thing led to another, and like I said, through David Wolf, who really discovered the superfood properties of raw cacao and his publication of Naked Chocolate, I got inspired to start Sacred Chocolate. Here we are.
Here we are indeed. Beautiful. Yeah, you guys are doing something, well, you're doing a few things very differently from a lot of other raw chocolate companies. Mm-hmm. One, you're using the whole bean. You're using the outer, you're using the skin of the cacao bean. You're using the whole bean, which I think is, you're probably one of the few companies doing that. Is that right?
From what I know, yeah. I mean, what happened there was early on in 2006, my partner David Wolf was on a call to a woman, Laurel Steinheis, who's a channeler. She's channeled, I guess, many, many entities throughout the decades. And David asked some entity that was being channeled through Laurel Steinheis on the telephone, actually, what's up with Sacred Chocolate and Steve Adler? And some entity said, oh, cacao, there's something in the skin or husk of the cacao bean that helps promote stem cell growth in humans. And so David immediately asked, well, how do I access that? And the entity just said, well, I think you already know how. And left it at that. But when David shared that information with me, I was inspired to always include that skin or husk of the cacao bean in Sacred Chocolate, knowing that that had that extra sort of, nutrient or energy or spiritual power, however you want to look at it, can help, ourselves in that way. So yeah, we take the extra time and effort to stone ground those husks or skin right into most of our chocolate bars, and we're using a source of beans that are very, very clean, so we can do that. The beans are so clean they kind of look like almonds, actually, so we can include it. So it really is like a true whole bean chocolate bar in that sense.
Yeah, I know Ronnie was saying when he was on the Big Island and he was eating the fresh cacao, and then he compared it to your chocolate. You guys have such a high purity and freshness that he said it's, such a similar taste. It's like you can taste the whole bean in it. And then you guys are doing something different. Yeah. You guys are doing something different with sweetener, too. I was listening to you talk about maple syrup and how it wasn't really anything you'd grown up eating or something you were even interested in, and then found out about what an amazing additive sweetener it can be for chocolate. We talk a little bit about maple syrup. It's actually, I found out a lot about maple syrup doing some research on your company.
Yeah, when I started making chocolate in my kitchen, I was experimenting with every single sweetener that I could get my hands on. And when I came across organic maple sugar, especially the source that we're using, it was from a flavor standpoint, it seemed to be leagues above everything else. It had this amazing floral note, and it basically just sort of complemented the raw cacao flavor profile. And so I was very inspired to use maple just from the flavor alone. It turns out it's also very pricey, so that was one of the downsides to maple, and that's mainly because of supply and demand. Maple is, for the most part, only sourced in the Northeast U.S. and Canada, and it's a very limited crop. It's a wild crop. You can't really plant a maple forest and expect to harvest it anytime soon. A maple tree has to be in the ground for 30 years before you can tap it. And when you tap it for a couple of weeks out of the year, and it's this very short time period that maple is harvested, it's just actually a water that drips from the trunk of the tree. It's not really the sap. It's actually just a water. And in that water is only about 1% sugar. So it's such a small percentage. That's why the maple is so expensive. It's a wild crop. It's limited. It takes a lot of gallons of maple water to get maple syrup, and then even more gallons of say maple syrup to get say a few pounds of maple sugar. So it is very concentrated. And but when I got started, I actually shared it with a friend he's a shaman, a real shaman from the Caribbean and a food scientist, and he had a restaurant in the East Bay of San Francisco. It was a vegetarian restaurant for many, many years, and he immediately tasted the chocolate and said, "What are you sweetening with?" I said, "Maple." He said, "Oh, that's wonderful." He said, "Maple's the best on the blood." And I don't know where he got that information, but it was just confirmation that I was on the right track there, and it was,
He said what? The maple does what for blood?
He just said that maple is the best on the blood, and he just left it at that. And
as far as like sugars.
I thought that was very interesting that he said that. I mean, maple is relatively low on the glycemic index, but it's not that low. It's about 50, 55 is some of the numbers I've seen. But it's interesting. It is one of the rare sweeteners that is reversed in its ratio of sucrose to fructose. Most of the sweeteners out there are very, very high in free fructose, but maple's very low in it, which I find interesting. Free fructose being linked to obesity and pre-diabetes and diabetes and so on and so forth. So
weren't you saying also too that they did a study with rats and maple syrup, and it actually helped? Was it prevent diabetes or work to help alleviate symptoms? I can't remember what you found out.
We published a couple of studies on our website. One was out of, and these are recent, so this is stuff I found out, years after I got into it. One is from the University of Rhode Island. They identified a molecule in maple called cubicol, and it somehow interferes with type 2 diabetes enzyme activity. So it actually kind of creates this little sort of speed bump or hurdle between you and type 2 diabetes, which it was a fascinating finding and a surprise finding. And they also got into all these other health benefits that they uncovered about maple. But the other one was a University of Tokyo study. That's the one on the rats. And again, surprise, they tested about 20 different commercial sweeteners on rats, and specifically studying its effects on the rats' livers, if the livers were being stressed out by these sweeteners. And maple was the only sweetener that was improving the rats' liver scores, basically not stressing out the liver. All the other sweeteners were stressing out the livers of the rats. So that was a real surprise finding.
I think maybe some of it has to do with all of the intelligence in that particular food that's coming from these trees that, we'll probably never find out all of the beneficial properties that are actually really there, but it's highly mineralized too as well.
Yeah, it is. Just like, coconut palm sugar is a real popular sweetener. We use that in one of our recipes, our mocha bar, and that's very highly mineralized, but maple is also highly mineralized with different types of trace minerals. And one thing that's interesting about maple is it actually is pretty high for a sweetener. It's pretty high in antioxidants. It's pretty high in quercetin and epicatechin. And epicatechin is the antioxidant that's extremely high in cacao. So that was an interesting finding that I came across.
Yeah.
So maple is a special sweetener. I'm kind of, it's near and dear to my heart, and as I got into it more and more, I just kept uncovering more amazing facts about maple.
Well, I think that it is so just admirable that you found out all of this and you followed your heart and you produced the chocolate bar regardless of the fact that the maple is, more rare and more expensive, and you just knew that, people would notice the difference, and no worries. This is going to become a very popular treat for many people and a way for people to celebrate in many ways. So thank you for sticking with it and following that, and you've really created something very different, that's for sure. And I've enjoyed many and will continue to.
Me too. Yeah, you guys, I want to get to the most important ingredient here soon, but would you speak a bit about, Steve, about what you guys are doing with some of these psychoceuticals, herbs? You're really, we know that chocolate, raw chocolate, is a vasodilator, so it's one of the most powerful ways of getting anything into the system, through the theobromide. And so talk about one of these amazing things you guys have been putting into the chocolate. I know you're doing the xanthomumol, got the hops. Chat a little bit more about what you're putting in this amazing chocolate.
Yeah, so at Sacred Chocolate we have different classes of chocolate. We have just kind of your traditional chocolates, just plain dark chocolate, say with mint in it, chocolate that maybe has a few other different spices like curry and things like this. Then we have chocolates that are geared towards people who have blood sugar issues. So we have a chocolate called Sunsweet with only inulin from Jerusalem artichoke, which is a very, very low glycemic sweetener in it as a sweetener to take the edge off that bitterness of the raw cacao. And another bar would say erythritol in it, again, polyol. Similar to xylitol for people who are overcoming diabetes. So we have these different classes of chocolate at Sacred Chocolate. We got into, because my partner is so into herbology and medicinal herbs and mushrooms and things, we started infusing the chocolate with super herbs and medicinal mushrooms. So we have our amino mushroom with 10 different medicinal mushrooms in it and pine pollen. And we've got our Amazonian with over 20 different Amazonian herbs in it. The core herbology, the Amazon jungle is in that. And then what we've done over the last couple of years is we've kind of gotten into more cutting-edge nutraceuticals now. So our first bar that we came out with, which actually won Best of Raw last year, this year, it's called Longevity Bliss, and it has an isolated molecule called xanthomumol in it, and that's sourced from the hops plant. It's a natural molecule from the hops plant, and it's a master antioxidant molecule, and it's designed to help with cell metabolism, and it's also designed to protect your hormones. Those are the two huge benefits of consuming xanthomumol. We have it in a proprietary patent-pending formula because normally xanthomumol is not absorbed by the human body. For instance, there's trace amounts of xanthomumol in beer because a lot of beer has hops in it, but it's in a form that it'll never be absorbed by the cells. Xanthomumol needs a special fat-based lipid delivery mechanism to get into the cells, and that's what we have. That's the form in which we have it, and we've placed it in that form in the chocolate, which even enhances it further because, of course, the main fatty acid in chocolate is stearic acid, and that happens to be an amazing delivery mechanism for xanthomumol as well. So we've put the xanthomumol in this special delivery mechanism and using the chocolate as a special delivery mechanism so that xanthomumol is delivered to the cells and it improves your cell metabolism. It helps protect your hormones. And depending on your metabolism and your genetic makeup, it could have some mood elevating effects. Some have been reported.
You found out that the Asian cultures seem to have a mood elevating result from eating the xanthomumol.
There's I don't know if there's any definitive proof on that, but it seems like that's what's been reported is out there is that xanthomumol tends, for whatever people of Asian descent, for some reason, seem to have more of this mood elevating effect by xanthomumol. They're not sure if it's an oxytocin releaser or if somehow it's doing some sort of neurotransmitter effect in the brain, but something's going on there. So we have that, Longevity Bliss. Then we just recently came out with another bar called Holy Hemp, which has cannabidiol in it from the hemp plant. And so this is what we've done is we've infused the bar with, of course, hemp seeds in it. But beyond that, we've put in a very concentrated cannabidiol-rich hemp seed oil in the chocolate as well. And so cannabidiol is a neuroprotective, and it's really like if you're suffering from any sort of nervous system disorder, especially seizures or anything associated with that, cannabidiol is well known to protect the human body against those sort of disorders. And you can just say Google CBD, which is the acronym for cannabidiol, and you'll see just a plethora of information out there about that. So, we're doing that sort of thing where we're doing these more, concentrated nutraceutical bars. We're about to come out with a bar that's going to have resveratrol in it, and again, a special resveratrol that's going to last in the human body for up to 12 hours. Most resveratrol that you just say buy at your health food store in capsule form may last 2 to 3 hours in your body if you're lucky. So a lot of that isn't even absorbed. It doesn't have enough time to absorb into your cells. So that's sort of the stuff we're into.
Great.
Wow. Alchemy. Hey, Steve, I wonder if you would want to take a couple of random questions that I've been messaged from some of the people who are listening in today.
Yeah, sure.
I'll just read you what they wrote. Well, one of them is wondering how the chocolate is sourced and if it is fair trade or what kind of practices are utilized as far as sourcing the cacao.
Sure. So currently the cacao is being sourced from basically small co-ops in both Ecuador and Peru. And currently those co-ops, the purchase prices that those co-ops are receiving are a percentage above fair trade standards.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for asking that, Deborah. And then I have another one from Jeff who wants to know if there's caffeine in raw cacao.
Yeah, there is trace amounts of caffeine in raw cacao. One of the main stimulants in raw cacao is a cousin to caffeine called theobromine, and theobromine has an opposite effect to caffeine in that caffeine constricts blood vessels. Theobromine dilates blood vessels. Also, theobromine is a smooth muscle relaxant, and that's probably why it does dilate blood vessels. So theobromine is considered a stimulant, not as strong as caffeine, and it has this, opposite effect on the circulatory system as caffeine. But there are trace amounts of caffeine in cacao, in raw cacao.
That's interesting to know because I think it's a kind of a widespread myth because I hear a lot of people make comments that, they're sensitive to the caffeine in cacao and, so they don't have it as much as they'd like to, but really what they're experiencing is theobromine and maybe they don't realize that. And that it's
absolutely.
Actually, the way it's working is in the opposite, because I've definitely noticed I can't have caffeine. And I don't know if it's the constricting that creates jittery and moody, and you can have mood swings from it. And I noticed I didn't notice any of that while I was having caffeine, but now that I don't have daily coffee anymore, I noticed, everything that was going along with that had gone away, all the things that went away, and I don't get those effects from having raw cacao.
That's great. Yeah, no, and everybody's different. Everybody's body's different, and the whole key is to, listen to your body, listen to your intuition, listen to your sacred heart, and follow, your body and the messages of your sacred heart to, tell you what the best thing is for you to eat at any given moment. The old adage, there's an old saying, one man's meat is another man's poison. And what that means basically is that what can be wonderful for somebody to eat is just the worst thing ever for the next person to eat. And a lot of it is very relative. It can depend on, your health conditions and your attitude and your age and even your environment, the altitude, the seasons of the year. So much is involved, when it comes to that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I encourage people exactly that, to either learn maybe some muscle testing if they're not sure, if they aren't, really strong on their own intuition. But I do the same thing, and sometimes I get a strong, yes, that chocolate is my medicine right now, or cacao, rather, and other times I get a week, and I'm like, oh, no, it's not my medicine right now. But I love that your packaging and the name remind you. Just in the name, sacred. This is a sacred medicine. This doesn't, it's not really meant to replace somebody's morning latte and it's not really meant to be used in that way, you know. So you can have different experiences depending on how you're approaching it as well. Like you said, attitude.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's, basically we chose the word sacred because for many, many reasons, one of which is that cacao is a sacred food. It's probably the world's greatest food, all things considered, only because it's so widely loved and accepted. It's probably one of the top 5 flavors in the world. It's super functional. It's super nutrient dense. Obviously it shows up in the weight loss industry, the weightlifting industry, the sports industry, just in general, and desserts and gifts and so on and so forth. And it's gonna make even more inroads. Even the large companies like Mars with their Cocoa Via, they understand that cacao is a medicine par excellence, right? Because they've developed a giant division of their company to basically putting cacao powder, and super concentrated cacao in capsule form. It's not just our raw chocolate movement that is aware of cacao as an amazing sacred superfood. The rest of the chocolate industry is aware of it as well. And so that's one reason, obviously, that we chose the word sacred. The other reason I chose it is because just from my spiritual path, my message to the world is to basically teach people to live in the heart and come from the heart and be from the heart. And when I say that, I'm not really talking about, like, say, that physical pump in our chest. I'm talking about the center of your soul, or the 0 point within, or the seat of the soul, or the God within, however you want to view that for yourself. It's that center of your being through which your soul kind of enters at birth and will exit at death. And so my message, just kind of like Gandhi's message was, really is, to basically teach people, hey, live from the heart, listen to the heart, since the heart is your higher intelligence, and be in that space as much as you can. Try and not live so much in your head. And when you're coming from that space, you're really in your true power. You feel comforted. You feel at home. You're actually one with your divine purpose, your covenants with the Creator, and so that it's like when you come back to the heart, it's almost like this gigantic homecoming party that you've never even experienced. And so that's what my experience was. And so, I hope that for other people that I come in contact with, and obviously that Sacred Chocolate comes in contact with. So, we created the chocolate in this, symbolic heart shape. It's actually built out of perfect sacred geometry. It's all golden logarithmic spirals and ellipses, and I spent a year on the geometry of that. And so that message is out there, even in a subtle way, to tell people, hey, there's love in this chocolate. This chocolate is a message. Not only is it great tasting, not only is it functional in that it helps, your body, it gives you energy, it elevates your mood, but there's this message of like, oh, wow, should we, I want to be living in my heart more, and I want to share that with other people, and so hopefully the message is, hey, this bar is a holy sacrament, and even if people aren't really conscious of it, hopefully that message is being transferred even in the unconscious or subconscious level.
Yes, and all of the people who are now much more aware of it can, that's going to inspire them, when they do buy the chocolate as a gift for somebody, to pass along that information and that intention, from their heart as well as from the sacred chocolate heart that they're giving to their beloved and their friends and family. So, and I think the subtle energies and the subtle messages are really, as we journey along a spiritual path, we start to realize that they're actually the most powerful of all. So I love that you've infused it with all of that, by using subtle energy to do it. But I know Hava wants to ask you, like, the big question.
Sure, yeah, but
let
me just add one thing about that. It's not so subtle. It's subtle and it's not so subtle. I was just reading some research by this Russian scientist, Garjajev. You could Google it, just Garjajev. and this is cutting-edge research where they have determined that the DNA, or DNA in general, is this amazing internet of information that literally, and it responds to language. Like literally it has rules of syntax, it has rules of grammar. So that whole subject of epigenetics has come to a much even higher level. I mean, if you get into the study of epigenetics, that's the study that your genes, certain switches of your DNA and your genes are turned on and off based on your lifestyle. And so your genetic makeup is not all that, static, if you will. You can change your genetics. And basically the DNA molecule is designed to respond to love itself. And so what these scientists have determined is it not only just responds to love, and that's a separate experiment I can get into, but it responds to language itself. And they determined this by first using lasers with language modulated on the frequencies of the lasers, and the DNA responded exactly according to the language. So the DNA was actually listening to the language, if you will, and responding exactly to what the language was saying. And they did this great experiment on frog embryos. So what they did is they had some frog embryos, and they communicated to the DNA the genetic pattern, the genetic information of a salamander. And so those frog embryos turned into salamander embryos, and they became salamanders instead of frogs. So that's the power. So that's the power of language and basically love. Love is at the root of all communication. Love is the root of all relationship. It's the root of all. If you look at love scientifically, it's a constant dance between two complementary forces, usually in the presence of some sort of stabilizing factor like intent or light or some other stabilizing factor. So love is this mysterious dance where one thing is becoming the other constantly. It's this dance back and forth. And so, and that's on the most mysterious, infinitely small, subtle level that the mind could even ever hope to comprehend. So that communication, that self-aware communication that love is at the root, obviously, of all that language, and that language is directly affecting all this DNA. So, if you're praying over the food, there's DNA in food, right? So if you're praying over the food, if you're putting love into that food, you're communicating to that food exactly the frequencies that you are. So what happens is a resonance takes place, and the frequencies of that food starts changing to become your frequencies. So that's another reason why it's so important to put love into food, to pray over the food, to thank the givers of the food, because the frequency that you are as an individual is transferred into as a frequency into that food, and then that food then is resonating with the cells of your body, and your body is able to maximize the extraction of all that nutrition.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and God rest his soul, Dr. Emoto's work showed that water responded, of course, so highly to love, but even more highly to gratitude. This is a beautiful seg into our final and most important ingredient in your chocolate, Steve, and that's love. You see that word, mostly on our favorite raw foods these days. It's, got all the ingredients, and then the last one is, and love. It's when we really eat as a spiritual practice, we know how important infusing all of what we're putting into our body with light and love. And of course, that's you're doing that with talk about how you're doing that. You're using mantra, you're doing prayer, you're doing some physical practices to really put the intention of love into the chocolate.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll get into that a little bit, but I just want to back up a little, because some people are, may not look at love scientifically, like how I'm looking at it right now. You can look at love in a bazillion different ways because it's this grand mystery of the universe. But I like to also, for the people who, are kind of more mechanistic in their thinking or more science-based, I like to at least portray love in this light, because it normally isn't. Normally love is portrayed as some sort of sentimental emotion. But ultimately, backing up to, like, if you look at the fundamentals of existence itself, existence is really only made up of 3 components, and the theoretical physicists of our time know this. Mainly, the most fundamental particle being this, they call it the Higgs boson, or I like the term the adamantine particle. And then there's this grand fabric that kind of weaves all of existence together as one giant oneness. And they call that the unified field matrix, or I like to call it the one spirit. And then there's this communication force. It's this power, if you will. It's the juice, it's the energy that makes everything come alive and make everything, work together and communicate, and that's love. And so you could say that, the creator is basically, that these 3 components are the creator manifest. So existence is a manifestation of, the creator in these 3 components, or these 3 components are comprising, or what creation is comprised of. And so with that view, where love is basically, kind of telling all those Higgs boson particles what to do, how to assemble, how to come and go, and it's communicating how to do that through this giant one spirit unified field matrix. And you look at what love is, it's this sort of primal magnetism, actually, and that's actually a term that physicists use. It's this magnetism that is both within the conservational field of electromagnetism and outside of that field, outside of structure. So it's this unique, like, infinite amount of energy that's fluctuating between all of existence as we know it, all of structure, all of the conservational field, and everything, and outside of that. So it's this mystical thing that, we look out at life and we see life happening, and that's just love in action. As we see things, evolve, that's love in action. And so, that's kind of what I'm talking about when I'm talking about love. I'm talking about that fundamental force. And how do we access that force within ourselves? How do we get into, ultimately, if you peel away our body and all the structure that we know ourselves as, what's left is this immortal, unique kind of frequency of our own unique love. And so then it's a matter of, like, how do we put that love into things we're doing? And when we do put that love into things that we're doing, doesn't it make things more joyful? Doesn't it make things fun and exciting? Right? It does. It always does. So usually we're actually, when we strip everything away, we are that love. So it's just a matter of, like, being that love. So, going into the center of our being and coming from that space, you're just being the love that you are. And then from that space, you can have intent to say, okay, what I'm creating from that space, I want it to benefit all. I want it to benefit creation. I want it to benefit all of humanity. I want it to be, homage to the creator. So that's basically where I'm coming from. And I can do it physically in the form of a mantra, sure. And I love the mantra that I sort of just was inspired to come up with. Was a mantra around manna, because manna is this biblical substance that, was prayed for at one point, and it was rained down on ancient peoples, and it was this gift from God. It was like this, out of grace, manna appeared and helped people. And so I don't really know specifically how any one individual needs to be helped or elevated, but what I can do is I can create a mantra to hope that something like manna materializes in sacred chocolate. So that's what I've been doing since day one, is I've been basically praying that manna, like manna from the Bible, manna from the ethers, manna from the universe, from the creator, materializes in sacred chocolate. So like right now when I'm thinking about sacred chocolate, I bring all of sacred chocolate energetically into my sacred heart, and my intent with all my power is that manna is materialized in there, and through the one spirit, through those adamantine particles, through my love, I know that the chocolate is altered in a positive way, and hopefully there is some amount of mana that's materialized in that chocolate so that it helps, people in any which way that they need to be helped.
Well, I feel it. I don't know about you, Hava, but I was just like, oh.
Oh yeah. Well, I love using chocolate before I meditate. I've found it really because I do, my meditation practice isn't just about, transcending the mind. It's really about being in my body, and I find it is such a beautiful conduit for being in my heart in my practice. And so I love eating a big old chunk of chocolate before I meditate.
I do the same thing, and I do that with my meditations. I go to the heart because I can have trouble racing around trying to quiet the mind, but I don't have that problem at all if I just go to the heart immediately.
Yeah.
Have you heard about that, Steve? A lot of people practicing meditation after they've consumed cacao?
Absolutely. I know my friend Jeffrey of Fortina Chocolate. He does an amazing cacao ceremony to do just that. And I've been in one or two of his ceremonies, and cacao is that amazing ceremonial food to bring about a heart opening, to quiet the mind, to do a meditation around. Historically it's been that as well. So yeah, and when you go into your heart, just being there is prayer. I mean, you don't even have to say anything. You don't even have to say a mantra necessarily, although mantras are powerful for sure. But it's just being there is being in the presence of the divinity, and in that infinite portal is infinite intelligence. I mean, you from that portal, you can issue forth anything you need in your life. Your mind, on the other hand, is this great tool to integrate your life into this 3D reality, but it's limited. It's basically, operating on, plus and minus electrical charges. It's a binary, DNA computer, all operating on ones and zeros. And so the mind really needs to be connected in with the heart in order to have the proper direction for your life. If the mind's disconnected from your heart, then you've got, potential, sociopathic tendencies, and you've got situations where the mind can take you on wild goose chases, but it's not rooted in the truth and universal principle. So there's danger associated with that. There's historical examples of that where the mind runs with an argument that's this perfect argument, but it's not really rooted in love. It's not really rooted in the Creator, and because of that, it can create it can create havoc. So you've got to that's why meditation and any spiritual practice or any religion that's really rooted in love and universal principle is super beneficial.
Yeah, we're really lucky here in Sedona. We've had some amazing cacao ceremonies with Jeffrey. My son's father does cacao ceremony. Have you heard of Keith? We call the cacao shaman. He lives down in Lake Italan, down in, I don't think I'm saying that the name of that lake, Italan, down in Ecuador.
Yes, I think I've seen his website.
Yeah, he's amazing. So yeah, we've been really blessed to have cacao ceremonies here. And like I was saying earlier, I really recommend people find a good, really, really good source of raw cacao and create a drink and use it in ceremony, even one-on-one with people. Because it opens the heart, it really facilitates a space for deep sharing and getting out of the head and hearing each other and being in deep compassion. It's quite a powerful medium for moving through energy together.
Absolutely, and it's very functional. I mean, the raw cacao has all its natural intact nutrients for the most part still there. I mean, when you roast cacao, you blow out about 7 out of the 8 analogs of phenylethylamine or PEA. That's that love chemical that kind of turns your brain on, right? So, and there's a lot of other subtle chemistry that's destroyed. So definitely go with raw cacao when you have the choice.
Yeah.
Wow. And I'm learning so much here, and one of the huge things that's coming to mind for me is that not all raw cacao is created equal, and that there's, when it comes to actually sourcing the beans, the very first step, is that true?
Well, again, it comes down to, how is the cacao grown? Is it grown with care, with love? Is it organically grown? Are the farmers happy? Are they getting, a good amount of money? Is it grown on rich soil? Is it grown in a natural way? I mean, all these factors come into play, and all of it's rooted in love. Again, it's like the more you love and care about something, the more it's going to flourish and be powerful.
Right. Yeah, most people are looking at a package and all they care about is whether it says raw, vegan, organic, and that's about it. But I have definitely noticed the difference between having your chocolates and having, other products that I've purchased. Huge difference. So it's interesting, to think, I don't know, I'm glad that you traced that back and that you brought up those facts too. That's very important, and it creates an opportunity for people to ask more questions about, how these products are being created.
Absolutely. I mean, it all boils down to love. I mean, you're going to hear that word from me a bazillion times. I mean, it's a great example of if you look at, say, kosher cooking and what makes something kosher, and you see a lot of things stamped kosher. Well, really what that means is there's just all these rules associated with if something's kosher or not. It doesn't mean that a rabbi has come and blessed it. That's not, and you kind of wonder about that, well, wait a second. I mean, if something's kosher, shouldn't it mean that a rabbi has come and put his love into it and blessed it? No, that's not it. And so the reason I bring this up is because, a lot of kind of the ancient ways have kind of been lost. And all these ancient ways were rooted in love. I mean, if you look at the laws of kashrut, which is what kosher is, that one of the main, rules was that milk and meat should never be combined in a meal. And you ask, well, why? Why is it that milk and meat never be combined in a meal? And so the real reason that is it was really veal and milk. And the idea was that the love, it's going against the love. In other words, the love of the mother, being the milk of the mother, should never be combined with her slaughtered offspring. You see what I'm saying?
Wow.
It's a dishonoring of the love. It's a dishonoring of the love, right? In other words, if you're gonna have milk at the table along with veal, which is say the slaughtered body of the mother, it's this weird dishonoring of the love, and so that was the real reason of it.
It wasn't that out vibrationally.
It was, and it's kind of common sense, right? That's just anybody with a heart, kind of that's common sense, And
right.
so if you were back on the farm and you were had a heart and you were in nature, you're yeah, that's just there's something about that I can't go there, right? But so a lot of things can be stamped these days, but the kind of the elixir and the real meaning is lost.
Mhm. Very true. Yeah, it's a fast-paced world, and people, lose sight of the details sometimes, and oftentimes the details are really where it's all at.
Yeah. I mean, it's important to understand where your food is coming from. Obviously, eat local, know the farmers, know the people, bless them, bless all the people who have given you your food. Bless the food. When you do that, it immediately changes everything vibrationally. And that's the most important thing to do. Never eat with guilt. I mean, if you ever eat anything with guilt, it stops that whole process. It stops the love from flowing, and it stops all the blessing and all the thanking if you eat with guilt. So never eat with guilt. Always eat with gratitude, and always eat with, thankfulness and bless the food and thank the givers and preparers. And that's the most important thing, and that's the most fundamental thing to all nutrition, actually, is that aspect. I would have to say that is the most important thing, is the love that's surrounding the food and going into the food. And it's more important than the actual ingredients themselves, which sounds kind of crazy, but that's my perspective.
No, I don't think you're alone in that perspective. Yeah. No, I think a lot of people have come to realize that, and it's a great practice, and it's personal practice, and it doesn't have to be followed in some, way that maybe traditionally you learned in your family. You can take that and make it your own and bless your food and your meal and all the people who help to get it there in your own very special way, which is, really going to be more effective anyhow than some kind of a habit,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, good. It's like, is the love there, is the meaning there, or are you just going through the motions, right? You can kind of tell when somebody's going through the motions, right? And the real vibe isn't there, right? The real intent isn't there. The real love isn't there. It's like, it's obvious, right? When somebody's just going through the motions.
Like an actor. Well, and I had an epiphany when you were talking too about the veal and the milk and that whole, how they figured that out and why they made that, a rule or guideline or whatever it is. But people have asked me so many times why I decided to eat vegetarian, which was years ago, and I always say, I'm not really sure. It was an energetic thing, and I just couldn't chew the meat anymore, and I didn't question it, and I literally went about 2 years before I ever even told anybody that I was eating a vegetarian diet, because I just didn't want the hassle that seemed to come along with it. And so it just was just a personal thing, and no one noticed that I wasn't ordering food with meat in it. No one paid any attention. But it was after I had started meditation and yoga practices that this happened. And so it made me realize that there was a heart opening that occurred there, and, a vibrational shift that occurred there that made it no longer feel okay to me to be chewing the meat, even though I didn't really understand why. So thank you for what you said, because it's given me some clarity, and that's really interesting.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. And absolutely, diet is always evolutionary. It supports our frequencies, basically. It's all frequency driven. So as your heart is strengthened, your sacred heart, there's kind of three hearts, if you will. There's your physical pump, there's the sacred heart, which is the sacred 0-point portal center of the soul, and then there's that heart chakra, which is like this etheric heart. It's kind of like, it's almost part of the mind-body complex, but it's still an etheric thing. And, one of the things that you can do to strengthen all three, actually, there's a lot of things, but one of the main things you can do is kind of expose yourself to sunlight in the morning and the afternoon. And doing that on a regular basis, and, right in the morning and the evening, you can kind of actually even look into the sun if you want. It's safe at that point. But what that does is it sets up this sort of harmonic resonance amongst those kind of your physical heart and your sacred heart and your etheric heart, and it makes everything more efficient in your body. It actually helps your sleep, it helps your hormones, it actually generates frequencies in your body. Remember, I said frequency is key. It generates frequencies that are the same as all the trace minerals in the solar system. So you need those frequencies to generate vitamins in your body. So it's really your body uses the frequencies of the trace minerals to generate certain hormones and vitamins in your body. And so, and you can get that directly from the sunlight. You don't, and it's supportive. So as you do that, your frequency levels of your hearts kind of increase. And as you do that, your body will shift as to like what it kind of wants to eat. It's like, okay, well, maybe I don't need as much meat, or maybe I don't even want meat anymore, or maybe I want this food or that food. And just like the birds kind of know what seeds to eat, because they're so in tune with their bodies, and they can kind of, vibrationally tune into, okay, I need to eat this seed. We have that innate, kind of almost animal instinct within us. But, our modern society, we've moved away from nature. And, the indigenous peoples were, they were more in tune with nature, more in tune with the sun and so on. And so they naturally, they weren't quite, indigenous peoples don't have this conversation.
Right.
Right? They don't have this kind of food, should we bless our food conversation. They don't have this whole conversation, what should we eat, when should we eat it, how much we should eat, right? It's just, for them, it's all natural. Right? Because they are so in tune with it all. And so that's really, part of the goal of this conversation is, obviously to listen to your heart and listen more to your body and get in tune more and pray and be more conscious about the whole thing. And then your body will naturally lead you in what's the best thing to eat for you.
That is so cool. It's like cosmic resonance nutrition by being in the sun. It's a lot more than vitamin D manufacturing, folks. That's amazing. So, Hava, did you have another question?
Well, Steve, where can we, I know you've got a lot of stuff on YouTube. I encourage people to go and check you out. You've got such a great high energy and vibe. It's fun to watch you doing interviews and talking with other raw chocolate people. But where can people find out more about what you're doing and website, all that good stuff?
Obviously, sacredchocolate.com. I mean, that's really the main place to start. If anybody wants to, make a purchase, there's a promotion going until the end of this month. Just type in, there's a coupon code SPOOKY, SPOOKY for Halloween, so SPOOKY. You can type that in to your checkout. Yeah, sacredchocolate.com. If you're buying something and you're checking out in the shopping cart system, there's a place where you can enter that coupon code SPOOKY and hit submit, and then it applies a 15% discount, which is great. So I mean, that's, if you're into the kind of information I'm talking about, if you want to delve more into this information, my favorite spiritual books that I've been studying for many years, that are also available actually on the Sacred Chocolate website, are called Love Without End, Jesus Speaks, and the author is Glenda Green. And then there's another book, kind of the sequel, called The Keys of Yeshua, also authored by the same woman, Glenda Green. And I've gotten a lot of the spiritual information I've been into for many years from those two books. So if somebody wants to kind of get more into the spiritual aspects of what I'm talking about, that would be a great start.
Amazing.
Yeah, we didn't even touch on Glenda this interview, but.
Well, yeah, Glenda Green used to live for many years out in Sedona, Arizona. She recently moved to Texas, but she was out there for many years.
Beautiful. That'll be for another interview.
Yeah, we have to do this again for sure. There's way too much to cover here. So
yeah, I mean, there's this is just a tip of the iceberg for sure. We can go on and on and on. But this is great. This has been great. I'm happy to take any other questions here as we're wrapping things up. If anybody else has a question.
I don't see anything coming through, and I didn't set it up to raise hands for this call. So the people who are actually on the phone, thank you so much for listening. But I don't have it set it up that way today. But thank you so much. This has been so informative, and it's really going to, I know for me, it's going to affect my decisions when trying out different products. And it's, I'm already a very appreciative customer of Sacred Chocolate, so it makes me even happier now that, I guess I picked up on that and didn't even really know why. So it's so cool to know so much more.
Yeah, right on. Thank you. It's an honor and a pleasure to be on here. Hopefully we can do it again. I want to leave everybody with this quote. This is right out of Love Without End, Jesus Speaks by Glenda Green, and it's just kind of a one-page quote, but it's one of my all-time favorites. Where if you get into the book, you'll understand the whole story between Glenda Green and Jesus or Yeshua or the Master, or however you want to call this spiritual, super entity out there. But this is a great communication. I love it, and it's apropos to this whole discussion, because the next time somebody's out there and you're looking at sacred chocolate and you're looking at the heart shape, let it just be a reminder to live in the heart. And I'll tell you why. This is the great quote on why. It goes like this, and I actually have this on my refrigerator, so I look at this all the time. The heart, so this is it. The heart, and when he says heart, he's talking about that sacred heart. The heart is a magnetic vortex through which the blessings of all essences and potentialities are received, integrated, and focused into living. Through the laws of electromagnetism, that power is converted into life energy. The heart, being essentially magnetic, functions best through innocent awareness, which attracts and receives. Acts of judgment which divide and repel will shut the door of the heart behind you. If you would make the heart strong, you must first learn to perceive with innocence, accept, and forgive. As you empower the heart, it will open to you. At first, you may simply notice this change as more passion for living, more peaceful sleep, or better digestion of food. The heart is the center of your health and quality of living. Therefore, those things will be addressed first. As you progress in your affirmations of the heart, however, your life will begin to have more abundant fruits, and you will have the energy needed to make more dramatic changes. Eventually, what you gain from your heart visitations will surpass your wildest dreams. There will be levels of energy which are transformational and transmutational.
Wow. I'm reading it. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And please do visit sacredheart.com, right?
It's sacredchocolate.com.
Sacredchocolate.com.
Yeah, sacredchocolate.com.
Please visit and find out more and follow along with all of the new creations that are coming from Steve and all of the people that he works with. And thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in today. And we will see you again next week.
Thank you both. Much love.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Raw Living Radio. Tune in live Tuesdays at 2 Pacific Time, or check out the archives at rawlivingradio.com. Also visit rawlivingexpo.com for updates about the world's premier raw foods and consciousness lifestyle events. You can like our Facebook pages, Raw Living Radio, Raw Living Expo, and Best of Raw Foods. You can also follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Our handle is Best of Raw. And of course, we can't wait to see you at the 2015 Raw Living Expo. Stay up to date at rawlivingexpo.com. In the meantime, please enjoy your magnificence and have a profoundly inspiring week.